Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal Saloon. Yep, I'm your host, Jay Hill, and tonight we have um, another guest that we had on last week, Elizabeth Marroquin, and we were talking about the paranormal in the military, and it was a really popular show that people on the podcast circuit really liked it, and I mean they really liked it. So I decided to not just to do another episode, just part two. And she actually has a friend of hers that she was in the military with, this, if I'm understanding this correctly, that she's got some stories. And so I was like, the more the merrier. So let's see here. I'll get her on and we get them both on here. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. So as I was saying before, I had you on. It was fantastic that Elizabeth, the stories that you were telling, and my listeners were eating it up. I mean, they really liked them. And so yeah, and Ruth, she Elizabeth hasn't really told me a whole lot about you. So if you maybe want to let people know who you are and what you do.
Okay, I am Ruth Hunt. I met Liz while we were in the military. We were actually instructing together at the place that she talked about in the last interview, where we kind of had a lot of paranormal experiences together, which I think helped us recognize each other. And I definitely come to Liz. She's the one that, when I don't know what I'm experiencing it is, I go to her and she kind of helps me work through things that I couldn't just find out on my own, basically. Um, I am married with 4 kids.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I retired after 20 years in the military. So I had, I'd have experiences before joining the military. And then actually, and I'm Christian, so I'll say a lot of mine, I say mine are spiritual gifts. And so anything I'm given message wise or anything like that, I say is not, glory to me, that's glory to God. He's giving me a message to give to someone. And that's how I try to approach it. But like Liz, and I'm sure not everybody always wants to receive messages for whatever reason. So it can definitely be a touchy subject, a way to tread on things. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of froze there for a minute, so that's fine. It's things weird things happen, like the last time when me and
Always.
Elizabeth, oh my gosh, when me and Elizabeth were on last week, and we had one of her living guests was messing with her microphone, and
Yeah.
yeah, that was quite crazy. um let's see here. I'm just trying to get the right setup. Hang on just 1 second. Okay. All right. So first off, um, this is paranormal related, but this is kind of weird. Before we get into the whole military aspect, I had to tell somebody this, and I really couldn't tell my family because they don't get into it that much, and they wouldn't understand. But I know that, Elizabeth, that you would understand. Okay, so um, sometimes when I go to different places and stay in hotels or whatever, I have weird dreams because whoever slept in the bed before me, kind of that residual energy or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've also had it, and this is where I'm going. I've also had it where, like, I get some of my clothes like from like Salvation Army and Goodwill and stuff like that. You could find really nice clothes at some of these places.
Right.
So I was looking for some a couple more pairs of dress pants, which is what I wear all the time, and I found this pair that um, were dry clean only, and I'm like, okay, but they were cheap and they were really nice, and I'm like, okay, so they were comfortable, and I was like, okay, so today was the first day that I wore them, and it had been about a week or two. Um, I laid down in the afternoon to kind of just nap, and I had a tremendously weird dream.
Ooh.
Okay. Now, clothes can also, influence my psychic abilities. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so I usually wash everything I get, from these
Mhm.
places. So I kind of just, you know, but for some reason, um, I was when I in my dream, uh, I was amongst other mobsters.
Ooh.
Okay, now um, there was a couple names that got thrown around, and I was somebody else. Okay, so I was basically I don't know what year it was, but I know the place because it was in Florida,
Right.
and I know that it was right by the beach, and it was a big high-rise hotel. Well, in the bottom of there, there's a
Ooh.
bar. Okay, and these guys, excuse me, these guys own it. Okay, and um, the and it was just really weird because I was observing all of this, and there was the guy that I was, whoever I was, or whoever I was, interacting with, um, was like on severe anxiety. I mean, and always looking over his shoulder and this and that, da da da. And then somebody looked out the window, and I looked out the window and said, "What is he doing here?" And it was one of these, and I heard the name, okay.
Okay.
And so when I woke up, I had to look it up. Um, Shoot, and it's not going to come up now. Um, Crap, it's not going to come up. Anyways, this guy, they said, "Why is this guy here?" And I was looking out the window, and on the bar there was like a rifle and something else, and I actually saw like some type of rocket launcher. It was really weird.
Oh
Okay,
my.
yeah, okay. So I saw these guys pull up, or come in off the ocean, and like a rubber raft, like a boat with a motor, and they came up and all this stuff. Well, long story short, I'm looking this up after I wake up, and I found the name, and I had also seen a bunch of different faces.
Right.
That was, in my dream, and I looked it up. And it come to find out that this was with the Gambino crime factory, or crime factory.
Crime family.
Ugh. And yeah, and he went disappearing in the 50s with his brother. His brother was found in New York, uh, and by some river or something like that. But then later on, he went missing, and he
Yeah.
was actually part of the Gambino crime family. And I was like, and I looked at this guy's picture, and I was like, holy crap! Now, could it have been that it was he that I was interacting with, or whatnot? But it was really weird. Now, granted, I looked at these pants, and I'm like, okay, these pants aren't that old. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they're from China, and they're from Banana Republic, which they started in 1978. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay. So the only thing that I could think of was that an older gentleman had these slacks, and maybe some of his intense memories that he had were just kind of infused in the clothes that he wore. I don't know. I don't know
Or
how
did
all
he
that
or did he
works.
follow you? Did he follow you home from the place and decided to show you the memory?
Well, maybe that I didn't even think
Yeah.
about that, you know. But it was really, gosh, it was really weird. I mean, that was
That
just
would be insane.
one of these. I heard the name Sims and Jimmy, and gosh, I can't. I wish I could remember the name. Sometimes that happens if I don't think about it right away when I wake up, I'll forget. But
Yeah.
I remember looking online, and finding that it was from the Gambino crime family.
Now,
And
when you see stuff like that, or do you immediately just want to go and tour the places and
no, because usually I'm inside the person that, you know what I mean.
yeah,
I'm not thinking. I'm just kind of living the way he's living. I'm just observing.
Yeah.
from his eyes. You know what I mean? I do
Yeah.
remember there was a guy. He was a slimy, low level. I don't know who he was, but he kept asking for money, and I was expecting money to come in. I was waiting for money. Somebody was supposed to bring me an envelope,
Mm.
and this one guy says, "Oh, can I get your credit card?" Well, we've had credit cards all the way back. Even my parents had credit cards back in the 50s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I know that they've been around for a long time. And I said, he says, I need like $200. And I'm like, so I gave him my credit card and I said, I want it back, And so the other guy was like telling him something else, like, make sure you bring it back, and it was just, there were just certain things that I just noticed. I remember the whole interior of this bar.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really pretty cool. And I remember the name, and the guy behind the bar, his name was Jimmy, and he ran the bar. I don't know his last name. I don't know anything about that, but
Yeah.
that's the first time that I've had that happen.
Wow.
Wearing clothes, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
usually if I'm visiting someplace or sleeping on a strange bed or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That
But
could be
yeah,
just that
so
intense. Yeah.
it was, it was, and I read this, and this guy's name was Vincent. I
Okay.
can't remember his last name. Um, but anyways, I remember he was basically a hitman. He was not a nice guy.
Right.
But I was thinking about the guy that I was looking through his eyes with. I don't necessarily think it was that Vincent. I think that it was somebody that he was afraid of, and I think that he said that name. He was showing up into the bar and this and that. So I'm thinking about that. That's how I can make the connection there. You know what I mean? So it was just
Yeah.
really, it was really weird. It was really bizarre, but it was intense.
Yeah.
It was totally intense. So, but yeah, I don't usually, I have dreams like that every once in a while, but usually when I'm somebody else. But yeah, once I remember, I'll remember. But for some reason, I just can't remember right now the name. But yeah. So, anyways, having said that, I had to tell somebody about that because that was just one of those
Thank you.
things that I was just like, it was a really crazy story. And I don't think that that is necessarily done because of the fact that I just think that there
Mhm.
was more to the story.
Yeah.
When I woke up and I was kind of like, and this was only within an hour's time. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
woke up and I was like, I don't think that that story's done. So I'm curious to see if I get anything else when I go to sleep tonight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
did see two faces,
Yeah.
and I'll know them immediately if I see them again. You know how when they stick in your brain and you don't
Oh yeah.
you don't forget them,
Oh yeah.
and they're always there.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyways, getting back to as I kind of go off on that little tangent. But I just had to tell somebody. So, anyways, talking about the military and the paranormal, and last week, Elizabeth, you had some really great stories, and there were some stories that you said that you couldn't remember quite because I kind of put you on the spot. Um, but Ruth, I'm sure that you have some stories.
Oh, plenty.
Oh yeah, so if you could let my listeners know and my viewers know that you've got some interesting stories to tell about the paranormal that relate with the military.
Actually, you just reminded me of one because you were talking about how when you stay in different places, sometimes you'll, experience stuff just because of that. I
Hmm.
literally had forgotten about this, but I had just gone to go visit my daughter and son-in-law at Fort Moore. That's Fort Benning, Georgia. If people don't know, that's the new Fort Benning is Fort Moore.
Hmm.
And I stayed at the housing there, and it was like old barracks type of thing, but it was like housing at some point. I don't know. I just know I'm laying in bed by myself, and I hear children running around in the room, and I'm trying to go to sleep. I'm like, no, like these aren't my own kids. These are some, some children, like, I don't know, spirits around me, and I'm trying to sleep. I'm like, you guys keep it down. They're just playing. I'm like, I'm trying to go to sleep. I rolled over to go to sleep, and they start poking me and touching me, and they're like
Oh,
talking. And I was really like, I'm trying to go to sleep. Like,
Play with
so
me.
mhm,
yeah. So I'm like, they're pretty, I don't know. I don't know if it's just they get excited if they know that people recognize them or you're nearby or whatever, but like I'll definitely, yeah, that one was more recent. That was a recent visit. And so, yeah, the next morning I'm letting my son in law know. It kind of creeps him out. It's funny to let
mhm,
him know that stuff. We had it at a Navy lodge when we were traveling through California. We stayed at a Navy lodge, and I saw it looked like a officer, like old timey officer uniform
Mm-hmm.
guy that was just kind of walking down the sidewalk by himself. And one of those era officer like uniforms that you're like, he does not belong here. He's
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
here. We're driving to
Right.
go check into this Navy lodge, and I'm asking my husband, like, do you see the guy that's walking right there? He's like, nope. I'm like, all right, I'm good.
Oh,
We're good.
wow.
We're just gonna keep driving then. We'll go check into the hotel and see how it goes. But definitely lots of different little things like that. I'll say my first big one in the military, because so joining the military, like I said, I had some experiences before I went in the military, and I'll say I honestly straight up kind of prayed and was like, God, can you pause it or something? Like, I gotta focus on basic training. I can't have a drill sergeant yelling in my face and there's like a dead person walking behind him. Like that's
Right.
not gonna
Right.
help my
Right.
focus.
Right.
That's not gonna help me make friends. Like, you know.
100%. Yeah.
Um, and I've talked to Liz about this, where if we talk about different faiths, like if it's more like you're asking your spirit guide, like, hey, I don't want this right now or whatever, stuff will kind of go in a dormant state. And it doesn't mean that it's just gone either. You can re-tap into stuff. And like I said, this is stuff I kind of had to learn with Liz, where I was like, hey, I had this experience. I asked to have it taken away, and it was. And now later on in life, I'm like, hey, I think I'm ready. And she
Mm-hmm.
was like, go ahead, like voice it, make it known. And that's something that, is important, I think, to let your viewers, your audience know, because if they're stuck in that state that they're like, did I ask to be had this taken away, now it's gone? Maybe it needed to be taken away for that moment, for whatever they were going
Right.
through.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
so
And
you
there'll be times when you'll think like, okay, I can't handle this. I need this to be gone or whatever, and they don't take it away because there's a
right,
reason for that. There's a
right.
reason why you would be still experiencing it,
Mm-hmm,
and there'll be times where and recently that I've I've kind of learned to put things like having a stove in front of you. You got things in the front burners and you got things in the back burners.
mm-hmm,
I'll just switch. I'll put something that's more prevalent, focus, on the front burners instead of, and it's not something that some people can do it, other people can't do it. You know what I mean? But it's just one of those things where, you know, if you can learn to transition those to front to back so that you can focus more on what you need to focus on or that what your
mm-hmm.
intuition is. I mean, it does get easier. You know what I mean? But
Right.
then there's times where it's just forefront and you just got to deal with it, you
Yep.
know? And that's the same thing with life in general,
Right.
you know, not so much
Mm-hmm.
even the spiritual aspect, but, with you having 4 kids,
Yep.
I mean, that's in your forefront. That's on one side and you're not moving that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that is something that you've learned to juggle. And, people with gifts, it's not easy, especially with kids.
Right.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter is of age. I have a granddaughter, and my granddaughter is a petty officer in the Navy, and
Okay.
she's actually married to a Master Chief. So, and with the child, and she learns to navigate all that because she's still active. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, um, yeah, I can relate to what you were talking about when you were trying to
Mm-hmm.
focus on what you have to do for the military and in your gifts and all this other stuff. And I mean, it's just
Right.
like I commend you for that. And I like I've said to Elizabeth before, um, I thank you both for your service.
Yeah, you're
Because it is
welcome.
very important that people realize that, especially people um, nowadays who just kind of forget that fact. How important it is to be in the military and to represent your country, and especially with two wonderful people like you who have gifts and who are able to communicate with the other side in that sense. Ruth, let me ask you this: how much um, pushback have you gotten from being gifted like this to with other military um, and personnel?
Wow, like it's so hard. It really is hit or
Yeah.
miss. Like, I know Liz, we've talked about like
Mhm.
sometimes you don't say anything. Like I can literally, if I see someone standing beside another person and I'm sitting there like, should I ask them if they know who that person is or what's going on, or ask them how their day is? Like you really have to tread lightly. Because some people, even if they slightly believe it, it freaks them out, or they don't want to, you know, because then I don't know. It's a living in denial is a really safe place. Like that denial bubble is so safe.
Mhm.
You don't want to sit there.
Right.
So it's hard. I do get pushback, you know, even from loved ones, because it means something more. And
Right.
people don't want to take the steps for the next more. And I'm like, I'm not here to give you the next more. I'm just here to tell you what they're trying to let you know.
Right. And that is, having, even family around, like my family doesn't quite understand or believe in what I do, but um, it's a support system and it's a respect factor. And there are other people where I used to work in different places that were okay with it, and other people weren't okay with it. They were just like, "Oh, you're weird," or "It's just too bizarre. I don't want." Most people are afraid
Mhm.
to know that there's something else besides the normal.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so it's not my job to try to prove the paranormal. I'm just experiencing it and explaining it in a way that I've experienced it myself. So let
Right.
other people make their own judgments.
Mhm.
I'm not going to sit there and judge people, and just because you don't believe this or you, I mean that's a whole big gamut of things.
Right.
So, but so can you say that is there a place where you have gone to, Ruth, that is probably um, more active paranormal wise than you've ever been to?
I really
Or
think
is
there's
it just
probably.
kind of just basically the whole everywhere you go?
I mean, yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel like some spirits, when they see that you recognize them or that you're aware of them, they
Right,
just come from wherever you are, like all the
right,
time.
right.
But probably the high spiritual activity places was actually Fort Sam. Like Fort Sam had stuff by the old hospital, by the barracks, like where, in where
I
we
forgot
worked,
about that.
the building we
Yeah.
worked in.
Yeah.
I had a really cool night one time. We were on CQ duty, and us as, NCOs that time, we were on duty as, like, I guess, the lead of it. And then we had junior little soldiers around us that we would send out to go check, doors and lights or whatever they need to go do. We had a soldier sitting on each floor of their barracks room. And from the cameras in the CQ office, I could see all those soldiers and make sure that they're awake, or whatever. But I'd
Mm-hmm.
still send like a little runner soldier around to go wake them up or to go trade people out. That's fine.
Right.
So the little runner soldier is sitting next to me. We're watching the cameras, and we see a shadow walking behind one of the soldiers that's sitting there. And the soldier's sitting there with their little book trying to like study. They're doing good. And the shadow just comes and walks behind him. And I'm like, do you see that? And the other little runner soldier that's sitting with me is like, oh my goodness, what is that? And I was like, go down there, go see if someone's there. They're like, no, I'm not going. And I was like, let's go together. Let's go check on your battle buddy. They're sitting there just reading their book. Nothing's going on or whatever. Yeah, we go over there. She's just jumps up as soon as we come by. So we know that she has not been disturbed. Like no one's been talking to her or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, hey, how you doing? Anybody coming in and out? Like, no, nobody had come by. Nothing was going on. It was very clear on the camera. Me and another soldier sitting there watching. A shadow just coming up and kind of hovering behind that other soldier that's sitting there trying to read.
Wow.
But it was funny in that sense, where the little soldier is kind of freaking out. But I was like, oh, this happens all the time. You're at Fort Sam.
Right.
Yeah.
So you think that is more of a normalcy for a lot of the people who are like yourself being gifted, that it's normal. It's like everyday life.
Right.
People who don't quite understand that aspect of it, like oh my God, what was that? That's like way gone. Yeah. I stopped experiencing that when I was little.
Right.
Right.
It's everything's kind of just been. It's a normalcy. I mean, I had a friend that stayed in a house that I was living in that was haunted, and he was. I woke up one night because I had two beds in my room. It was big enough where I had two singles. You know what I mean? So, but for some reason, I just was sleeping on the floor because I like to sleep on the floor, and I wake up to him huddled in the corner of one of the beds, and he was like, "Oh my God, there's somebody here," and I see shadows, and I heard the door, and my response to that was, dude, it happens all the time. Go back to bed. And it was like,
Exactly.
and he looked at me like I was high. I mean, he was like, "Are you crazy?" He was like, "That's not normal." I'm like, "It is for me. Go to bed." And it wasn't that big of a deal. Needless to say that he never spent the night at my house again.
Yeah.
I mean, but I had a couple friends that wouldn't do that. They saw something they didn't like, and nope, I'm not going over to Jay's house. And then it would be the talk in school, and so people knew, and I knew, and I experienced things, but it becomes like it just became normal.
Right.
Was it weird? Yeah, it was weird. Was it kind of creepy at moments? But it was, I don't know. People who have gifts like all three of us, it's more of an acceptance than that, living
Yeah.
with that fear.
Right.
I mean, there's moments in time where, I'm sure all of us have been afraid or scared at one point. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
About, something that we can't see or something we sense or something we, feel or whatnot. But those are far few in between, so, but yeah, there's so many different stories that people tell about how terrifying it is, where our world that's an everyday occurrence,
Yeah.
so we're just kind of like,
Yeah.
your worst day is a normal day for us, you know, spiritually speaking,
Right.
Yeah.
but yeah. So let me ask you, have either one of you had something, I know this has happened to you, Elizabeth, follow you
Mhm.
home or follow you to your barracks or whatnot?
I'm pretty sure, like, because I don't feel like stuff comes into the house out of nowhere type of thing. If I know, like, I
Hmm.
know I go through actions to clear my house when I feel like there's something there. We just had something in our house about 2 weeks ago, like that my husband sensed first, and he was like, "Hey, randomly this stuff just fell off. Randomly this was happening." And I was like, "Are you feeling, okay? Do you want me to clear the house?" And he was like, "I don't know, whatever." Like he like left for the night to go hang out like with his dad, and that's cool. That night I cleared the house. I, actually sat in Bible study and prayer, and I felt in a nice, clean, good, comfortable space. I go to lay down, and right when I'm falling asleep, I'm almost asleep, I feel whatever was hanging out tuck me in, like lift my covers and tuck me in. And I was like,
uh,
"Oh, thank you. I'm good." Like when on the other side, it was kind of freaking my husband out because he was trying to like take a nap and it's knocking stuff off the walls. And I was like, "See, it was my whatever what spirit it was watching out for me and saying you shouldn't be napping while I'm working and tucking me in
right.
after I did my Bible study."
Right, right,
Just
right,
messing with him, but
right.
yeah, like definitely stuff like that. I'm like, and when we moved into this house, we just moved here in less than a year ago. There was a little boy in the house, and my son
Mhm.
sensed him too. He was like, I think something went by the hallway, and I was like, oh yeah, it's a little boy. Like he's here. I don't. Maybe he's excited. There's new people here. I don't know. I'm like, sorry, man, you gotta leave. Freaking my kids out.
Right, right. Um, Elizabeth,
Yeah.
come on. What's the?
I've had so many things follow me home. It's not even. I had one that actually was probably the only time I've ever been freaked out in my house. Like really freaked out. I woke up and there was a creature that this was not a human.
Mm.
There was a creature that was peeking up over my bed.
Oh, nice.
And and I literally was like, okay, is this my cat? Like, is there somehow
Right.
my cat trying to no, my cats were both sleeping, not being good guard cats at all. Um, and so, if I close my eyes, it'll go right. No, I hear clicking.
Yeah, it doesn't work that
Mm.
way.
Yeah, and so I open my eyes again and I'm immediately messaging my friend and I'm like, hey, come help me, please. What? So of course, astrally, I said, come in and help me because it was like an instant fear reaction.
Huh.
And it turned out it was, from what my friend said, it was basically like a scout to see if it was safe to bring other entities in.
Oh.
And
Wow.
I had never heard of it before.
That's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, so we cleared that, right? So I don't have to worry about anything else following after. And I like, even to this, I can go online and I can find pictures of these things.
Mm-hmm.
They're like really short with these long
Yep.
pointed ears.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it
Yeah.
right what you're saying. Yep. Okay. Yeah.
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 And that's what
Yeah.
it was. And got cleared it. But I was like, what? That followed me home. Decided, hey,
Mhm.
look at this. Let's see what this is
Right.
like.
So the question, it begs the question of, what would create that, number one, and the other question is how that would happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first time a scout. I've never heard of. I've heard of
Yeah.
imps
Yeah.
and other minions. I've heard those
Yeah.
just because of the fact that they're just, you know, little annoying creatures that really don't do anything but kind of poltergeist activity, which
Yeah.
is far few in between too.
Yep.
But yeah, I've never heard of a scout. Well,
Yeah. So
that's
from my understanding, it was because at the time in my life, my stress level was so high and I wasn't keeping myself as protected.
hmm
So when you add all of those things, and then I've already got this light that
right,
follows me
right,
around,
right,
and
right, right. So you're putting out. So you're basically putting out into the spiritual world more so,
yeah,
kind of like a beacon.
yeah,
Mhm.
Kind of like in Star Wars, where they have a beacon on a ship, and then all of a sudden the beacon turns on, and they can see it light years away, and they're
yeah,
like, "Oh, what is that?"
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, exactly. And
well,
then it's almost like turn it off.
turn
Yeah,
it right, 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 right. Yep. Well, yeah, and stress and people with gifts, especially stressed out or whatnot. There's a lot of them, and I've had some friends that um, physically get sick.
hmm
When they're so stressed and they're so because the fact that they're either not grounding themselves correctly or they're not protecting themselves correctly or whatever, or they're letting reality control them through like either like the media or friends or work or whatever, to the fact that it breaks down all those barriers and then you're exposing yourself, and that
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
and I think that doesn't necessarily go the same um with people who aren't active on their gifts. I think it goes similar, but I don't think it does the same, but it also can create maybe more havoc.
yeah,
People who in general, even if they're not experiencing get their gifts or have gifts or whatnot, but I do believe everybody's able to. But it's just there's certain past people just so like no, I'm not doing that. That they're more susceptible to attacks,
right,
Mhm.
and you wonder, what makes certain people, you know, murder other people. What
yeah,
are some of those fundamentals to you know seeing that happen, and then the person says, I don't know how that happened, I don't know why that happened, I don't know. There's a reason behind it. There's something.
yeah,
I'm not all the time is it spiritual, but I can't say that it can't be possibility.
yeah,
So
yep,
protecting yourself and grounding yourself, even if you're gifted or you practice your gifts or you don't, it's still important to ground yourself and to protect
right,
yourself, and especially with all the negativity in the world that's going on now, over the years, over the centuries, over the eons, you know what I mean?
yeah,
All that frequencies changes, and you know fear mongering and all that
yeah, for
plays a
sure.
role, and
Yep,
it makes it makes our lives, for what we or who we are, it makes our lives a little bit more difficult than somebody who doesn't practice their gifts.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Or is it because of the fact that everything for us is heightened?
yeah,
It's
yep,
like you walk into a Walmart or something, and either you have to ground yourself or you have to protect yourself before you go into a Walmart, because
yeah,
there's a collective of different energies around a big building like that, that I've walked by people that give me the heebie-jeebies,
yep,
or that just
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, it's like, ugh, and it's not. intentional. It's just that's the way my spirit acts. And
Yeah.
I don't necessarily do that in person,
Yeah.
but inside I'm kind of like, oh my god, what did I just walk? Or who just walked by me?
Yeah.
I mean, and we can look at people and say, like I was telling Elizabeth the other day. I mean, we both know that mediums know mediums. That we could walk down the street and you look at this person, right away that they're gifted.
Yeah.
And that's how I tapped Elizabeth for a paranormal team. Was Spirit told me, and as soon as I saw Elizabeth, I'm like, she's got gifts. And I told the team that I was talking with and saying, you need to have her on your team. She's really good. This is and you even didn't realize that quite at that moment until we had talked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she actually, Ruth, actually
Mhm.
the one, the only one. I was still at that point. It was some years ago that I was looking to find the name of my guide, and she's the one who knew who it was,
Yep.
and it happened to be my grandmother. And I was like, because you said the name Gladys, remember?
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then after that, it was like I saw surprise. It was like
hmm
it was
I'm
funny.
not. I'll say I'm
But
not surprised. I've had to bring stuff to Liz where I'm like, "Hey, this guy's following me. He's got something to tell me, but I can't hear him. Can you see what he's trying to say?"
yeah, yeah. I mean, we've done that before, where we've
Yeah.
done live, readings for people and this and that. And there's certain things that I couldn't hear or see that she would like finish the ending of that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, and so yeah, and that's another reason why that when I work on I'm hope to work on my documentary in Gettysburg. I want to have her tag along because of the fact that I think that she would be really good at helping with the soldiers that are still there being in the military,
Yeah.
because I know that Gettysburg has got a lot of deceased soldiers that are on a loop that are going through this thing over and over and over, and I feel terrible for them. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of people can say, "Oh, that's hogwash," or I don't believe in that. That's your purview. That's fine. You can
Right.
believe what you want, but I can't deny, and you can't deny, and Ruth, you can't deny who you
Mhm.
are and who we are as the collective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So our main goal is to help people. It is mine,
Yep.
Right.
and there's a reason why you guys are in the military.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's not happenstance. That's by design.
Right.
You
Yep.
know, and so has there ever been a time where you've come across somebody and you didn't intend of using your gifts, but all of a sudden it was like you really had to. You couldn't avoid it. You just you had to throw caution to the wind and just use them.
Actually, you just had me thinking about it, us being in the military. Like, there's a reason why we, get these gifts and have to use it in a certain way. So this on the empath side, I sat down at lunch with my husband actually in Walter Reed Hospital. We were eating lunch there like we normally do when we meet up, and we had a soldier that we hadn't seen for maybe 5, 6 years who had happened to just PCS there. And so we were like, "Hey, come sit down with us. Let's have lunch." Right? Like, we haven't talked to this guy or anything. Sitting there.
PCS means permanent change of station. For
Oh,
those
sorry.
that don't know, it's
Oh,
okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Keep going. Sorry, sitting
No.
down, eating lunch.
oh, nice.
Um, and he's just, we're talking, everything's, as far as we know, pretty much going fine, but I'm getting a heavy off him where he's just like in a hole. It's like a cloud. Like, if I
Hmm.
could feel straight pain and depression, that was him sitting there.
Oh,
And I'm just like, are you okay? Like, I had to just finally stop, and I'm just like, are you
Right,
okay?
right.
And he's just like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Are," and the military teaches us to not like dance around the subject, just say it. And I'm just like, "Are you thinking of hurting yourself?" And he just starts crying. And I just start crying. And my
Oh
husband's trying to eat
no.
lunch. And
Oh
he's
my.
like, "What?"
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So
Oh
I'm
no.
crying, he's crying, and he's like, I was thinking about taking my life today. Like, and y'all asked me to sit down for lunch, and I'm like, okay, like, how about we talk about this some more? And we're in the hospital. Let me take you upstairs and we're gonna go, meet with the counselor right now. Like, I'm not gonna leave you alone. And between me and my husband, we made sure he wasn't left alone. He got the help he needed and he's fine and he's, thriving now. He's got a family, he's doing great. But it's
Nice.
one of those like had to say something. And the
Right.
second he
Right.
broke, I broke, and I was like, let's do it.
Right. Right. Well, that's the way it works. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, people who go through certain situations like that, you know, don't want to impose themselves on somebody. You know, I've had that happen to where I was supposed early on years ago where a girl sat next to me and was I was supposed to talk to her. I ignored that direction. I know what happened to her? No, I don't. It was in a Walgreens, you know, it was years ago. I mean, it was like so, but that stuck into my mind. I'm like, you know, you can't let opportunities like that, you know, walk by you, you know. And I did later on, like you did, at a hospital where spirit led to me to walk up to a table where somebody was in the hospital that were eating, and
Mhm.
I said, "Can I pray for you and you know pray over you and this and that?" And come to find out that they really needed that because somebody was in surgery,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And it's things like that that people don't quite understand, that we are not this mystic and you know we talk to the dead and you know the yada yada yada. Yeah, we do those things, but um we're to help people. You know what I mean? I really do believe that communicating and making that networking with other people so that they have the help they need to grow, you know, in their spiritual lives or even in their reality life, their normal life. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
I separate those two, the reality and the spiritual. I separate them because of the fact that they're two different entities,
Mhm.
and people don't realize that there isn't, you know, just one. There's two sides of the coin, you know, and I try to you know integrate both of those into
Mhm.
my you know into my life, and it's not always easy. Another thing I wanted to mention too during the show is I've been working on affirmations. I don't know if you guys do
Mhm.
affirmations.
Mhm.
I just started doing more so affirmations aloud outside of my home, and I've already noticed a change. Affirmations where you repeat something 3 times
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then you speak it with authority,
Mhm.
and people don't quite understand that. You know, it sounds like you're just talking to yourself. Maybe so, but I am basically, you know, throwing that out into the universe so that it comes back tenfold for me, so that I don't want to be able to walk throughout the day fearing of things. You know, I don't want
Yeah.
to let fear rule me. You know,
Yeah.
I want positivity to rule me. You know what I mean? So I started saying those things, and I'm really starting to believe a little bit more. Somebody had mentioned it about affirmations, and it's always been there, but when I was ready to really trust to use it, I started doing it. So,
Yeah.
any of our listeners out there doing affirmations or saying something aloud 3 times and believing it yourself and doing that, make a list of what you want to say, do it every morning. And I tell you, it's already made a difference in my life. I mean, and
Good.
it's only
Yeah.
been a couple weeks,
Yep.
you know,
Manifesting
so
is real.
it is, you know,
Mhm.
so, um, so what are you up to now, Ruth? What do you do now? Are you still in the military? Or are you
Nope. I work as a GS civilian,
okay?
still with some of our people that we used to work with, so it's still pretty cool.
Now, do you like it?
Mhm.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are you Elizabeth? You're still with the DoD
Yeah. I'm as government civilian as
as
well.
a
Yeah.
government civilian,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And how is that going?
Mhm.
It's going okay. It's very, very quiet.
Yeah.
Right, right.
It's
Me
I
too.
think it's not as much of a challenge as what I'm expected to have as I
Right.
continue to grow and ascend.
Hmm.
But I think that there are other things that are coming in my path. So there's a
Hmm.
reason I'm there, even if I don't know what it is.
Right. And I mean, I think that a lot of that too is in parts and time of our lives where we think, "What am I doing here?"
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, either you put yourself, you got to go back and say, "Did I put myself here by happenstance, or was it a mistake, or did I just
Mhm.
do something I probably shouldn't have been doing?" You know what I mean? So you kind of got
Yeah.
to weigh those options out. But um, from what I could tell from both of you, that you're right where you need to be. You
Mhm.
know, and you guys are, and I am so happy and pleased that you guys are on the show, because I think that this has been a great conversation. And um, I also wanted to ask you, Ruth, is there some place that you will not go to?
Not that I will not. Actually, my in-laws' house is very active, and I discovered that the very first night I ever, went to their house over 20 years ago. It was the very first night, and I told them what I saw and felt, and my father-in-law was like, "Yep." And I was like, "Really?
Yep,
We just
yep.
live like this?" Okay. And we do. And when we need a little extra cleansing in there, we do it, but it's, some old land. My daughters will hear, Indian drums playing. You can hear like people walking on the porch, like there's stuff in the house. It's very active, so I don't necessarily always seek out to be like, oh, I can't wait to go stay in that particular room by myself.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, do what I can. There's one I guess entity there that I've totally completely kicked out of that room because he was really ugly. And I mean, Liz kind of knows because I had her reach out to my sister-in-law about issues we were having, and it's kind of if you can say sexual predator in the spirit world, that's what he was. He's
Oh, yeah.
just gross, and I don't want him near me or my family. And like we
Right.
kicked him out, and he's angry, and he stands right at the door and like stares me down ugly every time I pass by him, all smug because he's stuck outside because I kicked him out. Like,
Right.
like, but
Well,
not
and
like
a lot of people, there's people in the paranormal world and the spiritual world may not realize that when they go, like a paranormal team goes to investigate a location or whatever, and they're trying to figure out what's there, and they hear the rumors or the the supposed facts of what's there, what's not, this and that. And when you hit on something, you talk about when you said sexual predator in that sense, yeah, some of those spirits still carry some of that characteristics as they did in life. And if there's not something that they're going to give up because they don't want to cross over,
Yeah.
that's still going to resonate.
A real thing.
And it's going to resonate on a negative frequency.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because of the fact that it's an ill intention.
Right.
And so what a lot of people don't quite understand that is, when you're coming in contact with a spirit, especially to me, that's why you kind of need a medium or somebody on your team to kind of differentiate between what frequency is coming at you and what, you know what I mean? It's so if they think, oh, thank you for, we're talking this, and this guy's a real creep, you know what I mean? And they think that he's, the best thing to slice bread in the paranormal world. It's like, yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Right.
So I think that mediums are important on paranormal teams. I do anyways. It's just my opinion, but they have a lot of researchers and stuff like that do a lot of the work. But having somebody gifted on a paranormal team kind of goes hand in hand,
Right.
and so, but yeah, it's in different areas of the, like you were talking about California. Was it where you were staying in that location where okay, so even in that land, I mean, the land itself, I mean, it was just, there's so much, especially like San Francisco and even San Diego. I mean, it's just, there's different hot spots in that. And I've been to the Waverly House in San Diego. That was a peaceful, pleasant place. I mean, it was, I felt okay there. I've always wanted to be there, or always wanted to go there, and I did, and it was, really pretty cool. My son-in-law, I was with, realized who I was and what I did, and now thinks I'm a crackpot. But that's okay. My daughter knew who I was, and she is probably thinking I'm a crackpot, but that's okay. I am who I am, and I'm enough, and that's what I say to myself. You know what I mean? So, but so Elizabeth, I knew that you said that you might have another story or two.
Maybe. There were some that I know that when Ruth was talking, I was like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that hospital at Fort Sam too. That so my daughter did want to make sure that I told you. So we actually had it was here in this house a couple months ago, a card, like a card that like somebody just like sends you in a mail with a note or whatever, just flew across the room. No reason whatsoever. The only time anything that I know of has ever just like physically flew in the house. Never happened again. Didn't happen before that I know of.
Was the card already there?
It was on a cabinet shelf,
Okay.
and it just flew across the room.
Oh,
And
nice.
my daughter was like, "Hey, mom." Yeah. This thing. Okay, maybe I should clear the house. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that was, and they're so used to it
Right.
too that they're
Right.
both between dreams and seeing things or feeling things or hearing things. They're it's normal for them as well.
Yeah, your gentleman friend um kind of attached himself to me the other day.
Oh, yay!
Not
I'm
attached to
sorry.
himself, but I
Yeah.
mean he kind of yeah, he gave me a little bit of anger anxiety, which
Oh no.
I knew where it came from.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah, cuz I don't get angry,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And when I know that I have random anger issues come out of nowhere, it's from someplace.
You're
And
like,
so
it's from
I
there. Yeah.
right, and so I knew that that's kind of where it came from. Well, he was removed quickly. I
Yeah.
mean, but the residue was
Yeah.
still pretty thick. Took a couple days to get off, and I was like, ugh. So
Yeah.
I
He
don't
wore
know
me out.
his story,
Yeah.
but if you could tell him not to do that again, I would
Absolutely.
appreciate that
Yeah.
because that was just like, yeah, that wasn't very nice.
Need to clear the house. Yeah,
Yeah,
most of the time
maybe.
they don't really bother me. I don't know if it's just because I just stopped paying as much attention to them, or if
Because
they're.
do you only have females in the house?
Yes.
That's why.
Yeah.
Because you're female and it's more of a calm, you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
there's
That
not
makes
a
sense.
there's he's the masculine male,
Yeah, there's
you
no
know.
masculinity in the house.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Except
And
for the cats.
so
Yeah.
when we were talking and we were interacting and I knew I could see him and I knew who it was and all this and
Mhm.
he didn't like that because
Yeah.
I could see him.
Yeah.
And
And he
but
kept
I
trying to interrupt.
Oh,
huh?
yeah.
He kept trying to interrupt and like mess with her
Yeah,
mic
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. He did
Yeah.
not want me to interact because it was kind of like more or less of grounds. These are my grounds.
Yeah.
This,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and that's not what I was trying to do. We were just having a conversation.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what
It
I
should have
mean?
been. Yeah. It's like, dude.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I had
So
one. I actually thought about this this morning, and that's the only reason why. And it was actually before you even mentioned me
mhm,
coming on. I thought about it,
mhm.
which was really funny that you said, "Hey, do you want to do this tonight?" Because I was like, "Well, yeah, I got one." So I had at the time I was married, and I know anyone who has ever had the insecurities of being a wife and knowing that your husband is up to something, and just not being able to prove it, but knowing because you have the intuition to know
Yep.
that your spouse is doing something. So my spouse had come home, and I had this was, he was out all night. He came home at like, it was like 4 o'clock, and I had to go to physical training at 5:30. So after he went to bed, I was searching the house knowing he had alcohol or he had some type of contraband that he swore he
Mhm,
didn't have. Searching, searching, searching just everywhere. Couldn't find it. And I was like, well, look, I'm going to be late. I have to go. So I go. Everyone in my house is asleep. And I get a text message. And this text message, and I will never forget it, said, "Ease up, baby girl." It was, every letter was capitalized, it was underlined. And my dad was the only person, he had passed away about a year before that. My
mhm.
dad was the only person who had ever called me baby girl. No one
Wow,
ever has been allowed to call me that ever before or ever since.
wow.
And I read that and I started crying, and I was like, this is really effed up. Like, if this is my husband doing this, thinking it's funny. So I call him as I'm
Mhm,
walking out to formation. I call him and I'm like, "Did you do this? Is this you?" And I woke him up.
mhm,
He's, "Elizabeth, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is not me." Never, never. It wasn't from him. It was a random text to me, unknown number at the top, just said, "Ease up, baby girl." And I was like, my dad just messaged me.
nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But when your emotional state, and when you take that little seed of doubt of your spouse or whoever,
Hmm.
girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever,
Yeah.
if you keep watering that with your fear, and
Yep.
it gets bigger, and then it starts blinding the spiritual side of it, and that's all
Yeah.
you can see is that
Yep.
big, huge seed of deceit that you've
Yep.
created. That
Oh, I was
you
right. I was
right,
right. But the
right,
problem was that I was getting so angry that there's no
right,
telling what I would have done
right,
if I once
right,
I would have found it or caught it.
right.
Yeah.
Well, and that sense of creating that, there's a lot of people that do that, and they don't see past the truth
Yeah.
of it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
They're like you said, it was the anger, it was the whole
Yeah. Oh
frustration,
yeah.
all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But that immediately calmed me down. Like immediately,
mhm.
just like, okay, my dad is watching. Like, and he knows that no matter what, everything will be okay.
Speaking of random like texts from spiritual people, um, I was talking with a lady years ago, and she wanted me to come with a group that I was with, investigate. And this old lady, and it was her house, and her grandkids lived there, and this and that. And she was explaining, all the stuff that was going on, and this and that. And I said, okay, yeah, sure. I said, we could probably do something. We'll look into it, and this and that. And I hung up the phone, and I was standing in my friend's garage because I was at his house, and I was talking to him, and she called me.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm standing there and just talking to him and this and that, and I get this text, and I'm like, oh, and I look, and it was from not Facebook Messenger, but regular text messaging,
Hmm.
and I open it, and it says, "Can you help us?" And I'm
Oh.
like, okay, or can you, yeah, can you help? No, she said, it's like, can you help me or us? I don't remember, but
Yeah.
it was a while. Anyways, so I'm like, okay, so I call her back because it came from that number.
Yeah.
I call her back, and I said, did you need something? I said, what, can we help you with something? So I read her the text message. She's like, I didn't send that. And I'm like, she's like, my phone's been
You
sitting next to
sure?
me the whole time. And she's like,
Oh.
she's an old lady. She
Yeah.
doesn't do texting.
Yeah.
She had a flip phone. Okay. And she was like, yeah, she's like, I don't know what to tell you. I, after I got done talking to you, I turned the TV on to watch TV. And then a couple minutes later, you call me back. You ring it, my ringing my phone, and I said, yeah, and I said that's what this message said, and I sent it to her, and she's like, I didn't send that.
Huh.
Come to find out, there was a lady of the house that lived there.
Yeah.
She was murdered in the 1970s or 80s
Oh my.
by a transient. Broke into
Yeah.
her house. Her
Yeah.
husband had died in the 70s or something, and she was, an old lady that was, she was from the 50s. I could see her wearing 50s clothes, like Leave It to Beaver type. You know what I
Right.
mean? That
Yep.
and
I see it.
so
Yeah.
yeah. So she, after her husband passed away some years later, it was like in the 80s or something like that, or the 90s, and she was living by herself, and she was old, and guy broke in that was looking for food or looking for something, and he murdered her in that house. Well,
Oh.
when I got that message, that was the first image that I had saw, was that this lady from like Leave It to Beaver.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, am I thinking of the grandmother that I just talked to? And then so that's when I talked to her, and she was like, no, I didn't text you. And so I figured out that that's who it was. So when we went there and we cleared the house, and we, got it all squared away and this and that.
Yeah.
So every once in a while I think about that house,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was just really bizarre. Yeah. Nobody, they did get the guy who murdered her, because like he was a mentally ill, person that was just looking for food and whatnot, and broke into her house and this and that. And so
Right.
it was
You
a
have somebody
tragedy.
coming through your mic. I don't know if you hear.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did hear that, but I didn't know who it was.
Yeah, unless it's mine and I'm just hearing it too, but I heard it coming through your mic.
Did you hear it, Ruth?
I normally don't hear that much. It's normally Liz. Like I'll see him, but I normally can't hear him.
Hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, it was really bizarre, but that was one of the texting and telephone. Um, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
yeah. Um, so yeah, we've had that quite a bit. Every time that we've ever been done alive,
Hmm.
me and Liz will get voices in our mics. We'll get um
I was hearing people chatter just
oh
now. Like
yeah,
I'm literally
yeah,
like, okay.
I'm not
yeah.
surprised. I feel like they get excited.
Yeah.
Right, right. Well, I mean, and it's just that just goes with the territory, you know. So we
Mhm.
don't really think about it, you know. We don't really pay attention to it
Right.
unless we're kind of told to, you know. Usually,
Yeah.
when spirit directs me to pay attention, you
Hmm.
know. Last time I was told that, I ended up giving my car away to somebody, you know. I
Oh
mean,
no.
so yeah, I mean, it was just well. There's a story goes with it. I walked into work. It was just years ago too, and it was I walked into work, and spirit basically said to me, "I need you to pay attention today." And I'm like, okay, you know, I heard it like she was standing right next to me,
Yeah.
and then come to find out that there was a guy that was on his, he was a former pastor, and that he was into drugs and heroin or meth and all that. And he was trying to clean himself up, and I was trying to sell my car because I just got a different one,
Mhm.
and he basically I'll give you this, I'll give you that, da da da, and I said, no. I said, I'm really looking for some money. I need to do this, do this. He's like, well, I said, I don't need all that furniture stuff. I don't have any place for it. So I said, you can come look at the car. So he come look at the car, and then he really liked it. Well, it was on the outs for me because it kept, sometimes it would die at stop signs and this and that. So I told him that it's kind of a piece of junk.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
I mean, it still works and it drives. It just needs a little bit of tinkering. And he left, and that afternoon, I took a nap, and like I usually do, because naps are king. I don't care what anybody says.
It's good for you.
Naps
Yeah.
naps are king.
Brain health.
So I laid down, and while I was laying there, spirit says, I want you, this is what I want you to do. I want you to do this, 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 and this. I was like, I gave him my car, gave him some stuff to read, some stuff to listen to, and to help him, da 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 da. And I did. He couldn't believe it, and that car never died on him.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay. So there's moments like that we all have moments in time when spirit basically says, I need you to step up. I need you to help
Hmm.
this person. We're all connected spiritually in one form or another. So it's just like, and especially what we do, and being gifted as we are, um, and helping. I've always said that I help the living as well as I help the deceased.
Hmm.
Because of the fact that there's not that fine line. It's just, I don't know. I've always believed in that. And
Yeah.
so yeah, we all have these great stories of wanting to help people, and that's just part of what our makeup is. And
Hmm.
a lot of people are connected to that. The people that stay away from you and are jealous of you, or talk behind your back or whatever, because of the fact that they don't like to see your light in that sense, because it makes them jealous. It makes them. But the one thing that you can understand is that we all can obtain that light. Everyone has the ability to obtain that light,
Yeah.
you know? And I truly believe so. And I just heard something else on your mic, and it was a male's voice.
Yeah.
Wow. So
I got
yeah,
I
so
got nothing. I don't
I
know.
know, I know. So people that are going to listen to this on a podcast or whatever, I mean, they're with when me and Elizabeth get together to do a show or even do a live for anything, we usually have interactions with spirits live. You get voices, we get knocks, we get whatever. You know what I mean? So it's normal for us. So if you guys pay attention to it, if you want to go back and listen to it, maybe you can pick up something that we missed. And
Yeah.
if you want to message me, my email is on my profile for my podcast, Studio 6 Media Productions. So, yeah. So, having said that, we've already gone over an hour. Wow, that time flew. Holy cow.
Wow.
But
All
this
right.
has been so much fun. And Elizabeth, you've been great. Ruth,
Thank
it's
you.
a pleasure meeting you. And I hope
Thank you
that
for
we
having
could
me.
do this again.
Told you she's amazing.
Yeah, she is
We got plenty.
truly.
Yeah, we got plenty of stories.
Yep, yep, yep. So yeah, we'll have to do this again because this has been a lot of fun. So having said that, I want to thank my guests. I want to thank my listeners and my viewers. We've had a steady flow of 8 to 10 people in this chat all night. Excuse me. So um, everybody, you can find Studio 6 Media Productions all over social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Um, you want to go to Studio 6 Media Productions on Good Pods. That's where almost all of my shows are on there, and they should be in order, if I'm not mistaken. But Good Pods has a great list. They're a great app, easy navigatable. So yeah, I promote Good Pods quite a bit because when I listen to podcasts, it's either Spotify or Good Pods. So I just want to throw that out there. So having said that, I want to thank everybody again, and everybody tune in to our